They left a dumpster in my driveway on a Saturday morning, bright orange, swung by a crane like it owned the place, and a note taped to the lid that said "Permit pending." I remember standing there with my coffee, the sun still low, and feeling something in my chest tighten the way a rope does when you realize it's time to pull. That's where this whole thing starts, with a dumpster and an idea that rules can mean different things depending on who's writing them. My name is Sam Wheeler. I grew up with mud under my fingernails and the smell of diesel in the mornings, not because I loved mess, but because this land's been in my family long enough that it has my grandfather's elbow grease woven into the fence posts. We live out by a ridge they call Cedar Hollow now, but a few years back my wife and I moved out here for the quiet. Quiet, it turns out, was negotiable. On the other side of the neighborhood is Gloria Hargrove Sharp Collar, wallet full of bylaws, kingmaker of the HOA. Gloria had that voice of someone who's always been listened to. It slides through a room, and the room rearranges itself. She liked reports, she loved letters, and she believed in order like it was a family heirloom. She also liked being the one who decided what order meant. The fine showed up 3 days after the dumpster appeared. $500 for unauthorized exterior storage. There was a formal letter, a stamped envelope, and a timeline that read like a countdown. They said contractors had to be registered, dumpsters had to be approved, and everything must be aesthetically consistent. I called the contractor, he swore he'd filed a permit. I called the HOA, Gloria assured me the rule was clear. I started to read. Reading bylaws is the worst kind of late-night entertainment, the kind that makes coffee a necessity and sleep a luxury. Somewhere in Article 7, under temporary structures and encumbrances, you find language that can be twisted if you want to twist it. Words that say one thing in black ink and mean another when someone wants them to. That's the ugly part. Rules are often neutral until power picks a side. I didn't want to fight. I'm not a trouble seeker by nature, but the fine felt personal, like a pinprick that turned out to be a splinter. I documented everything: photos, timestamps, the contractor's emails, because documentation is the only honest currency when someone with influence can make your life a ledger. I went to the monthly meeting thinking I might be able to clear it up. Instead, I walked into a courtroom of kitchen chairs and watched Gloria give her opening statement like she was revealing. "Sam," she said in front of 15 people and 2 microphones from a local blog that prints every small victory, "we have standards. We keep our neighborhood beautiful." The crowd nodded. People like beauty when it agrees with them. I explained the contractor permit, showed my photos, and she tilted her head like she was inspecting a piece of fruit. That tilt was where it got personal. After the meeting, a neighbor, Ruth, who runs the farm stand, pulled me aside and said quietly, "She's been on everyone lately. Complaints, fines, notices. Folks are scared." That's when I realized this wasn't just about a dumpster. This was about Gloria testing boundaries and watching to see who moved. So we pushed back. Not with banners or bullhorns, but with paper. I filed an appeal, I sent certified letters, and when the appeals committee asked for more time, I asked for their minutes. I asked questions that the board hadn't expected anyone to ask. Sometimes the simplest thing, asking for what's written down, is a small, loud rebellion. And then something strange happened. One morning, the neighborhood found a dumpster in Gloria's own driveway. Not misplaced, but placed. Not a contractor's job, but a tableau orange against her flagstone. A bright, ridiculous exclamation. Someone had dropped it there and driven away. There's a kind of silence that follows when a prank is also a statement. People circled like vultures and like neighbors. Gloria called the county, called the police, called her lawyer. She was furious but exposed at the same time. You can't order people to believe in your moral high ground when the camera on Main Street just recorded you being human. After that, the conflict escalated. Gloria started enforcing rules with a meticulous cruelty. Fines for things that had been tolerated for years, inspections that felt like intimations, letters that arrived with official stamps and an edge. My contractor's invoice was held up. My mailbox got notices from the post office about address verification. The neighborhood felt smaller, as if the world had folded and we. She had a son, Dylan, who liked to stand at the periphery and act like he'd been dragged into a script he didn't write. He would show up at meetings and try to mediate, his hands in his pockets, shoulders loose. But his mediation often sounded like threats with polite punctuation. Once, after an exchange that left the room heated, he cornered me by the water cooler and said softly, You know what people are willing to do for a quiet life, Sam. It wasn't a promise. It was a detail meant to unsettle. The local blog smelled blood and printed a piece about HOA overreach. The piece went small viral in town, and suddenly the coffee shop on Route 9 was full of people debating whether someone's love of rules justified the way those rules were used. I found myself at the center of conversations I had never wanted to lead, like a farmer who accidentally found himself running for mayor. The turning point came on a Tuesday night. My security camera caught a truck near my property. Two silhouettes moved with the clumsy exactness of people trying to be invisible. One of them carried a bag. Another moved to the side with a flashlight. The bag had tools. Nobody likes a late-night break-in. It's a private violation that leaves a public bruise. I called the police and uploaded the footage. The footage showed Dylan, his jacket familiar enough that my neighbor recognized it, and another person I didn't know. When I called it in, my hands trembled not from fear exactly, but from the realization that this line between rumor and evidence had been crossed. Evidence clarifies, but it also forces motion. They arrested Dylan a few days later, after a neighbor's social post and an officer's follow-up. He swore and cried. Gloria drove up in her sedan like someone arriving late to her own reckoning. The charges were messy and the legal system slow, which let the story simmer in town like soup on a back burner. People came forward after that, not because I asked, but because the silence had broken. They told of fines that cost months of peace, of letters that felt like traps, of service providers who said they'd been unofficially blacklisted. The HOA's veneer of unanimity peeled like old paint. Gloria's allies found themselves defending moral clarity while their faces looked small and concerned. In the end, Gloria stepped down from the board and moved away. The neighborhood exhaled. My driveway stayed my driveway. But the last image, the one I still see when I close my eyes, is me at the neighborhood cookout, the grill hissing, laughter doing more than fill the air. It repaired something small and fragile. Yet in my mailbox, the final twist, a card that read, "This isn't over." I folded the card, placed it in a drawer, and kept living. If there's a moral to this, it isn't that rules are bad or that order is evil. It's that power, left unchecked, finds ways to be unfair. Paperwork can be protection for some and a weapon for others. Most people want a place to live in peace that is not always passive. Sometimes it requires showing up, patience, and a file cabinet full of emails. I tell this not because I love conflict, but because communities should remember how power can be used and misused. Documentation, quiet persistence, and a few brave neighbors can change the ledger. If you've lived through something like this, tell me what you did. If you think I was right, say so. If I was wrong, tell me that too. Leave a comment. Have you ever had a petty rule go nuclear in your neighborhood? Who enforced it? And how did you respond? Hit like if you think communities should be more transparent. Hit subscribe if you want more stories about ordinary folks standing up, and leave your experience below. I read every comment. And sometimes the conversation keeps moving.